I still remember that night, clearer than most things in my life. March 7th, 1978. The lights were bright, hotter than usual, or maybe it just felt that way. The audience was already buzzing. You could feel it in the room. That kind of energy you don't have to see, you just know it's there. That was The Tonight Show. That was my world. Every night, same desk, same chair, same rhythm, jokes, laughter, applause, repeat. And for years, I never lost control of it. Not once. Until that night. Tim Conway was my guest. Now, if you knew Tim, really knew him, you'd understand something immediately. He didn't walk into a room. He arrived inside a joke. Every step he took felt like part of a bit, even when he wasn't trying. And the audience loved that about him. Hell, I loved that about him. But that night, something felt different. I didn't have a reason for it. Nothing obvious. Just a feeling. Like the air had shifted just a little. Backstage, before the show, I caught a glimpse of him. He was early. That alone was unusual. Tim wasn't careless, but he wasn't early either. He was sitting there, holding a cup of coffee, but he wasn't drinking it, just staring at it, turning it slowly in his hands, over and over, like he was thinking about something heavy, something he hadn't decided how to say yet. I remember thinking, all right, something's going on here. But this is television. You don't stop the machine because of a feeling. You keep moving. You always keep moving. The show started. Monologue went smooth. Jokes landed. Audience laughed. Timing was right. On the outside, everything looked perfect. But inside, I wasn't fully there. I kept glancing toward the curtain, waiting. Not for a cue, but for him. Like I knew something was coming. I just didn't know what. First commercial break. Ed leaned toward me. You all right, Johnny? I told him yeah, because that's what you say, always. But the truth? I wasn't sure. Then it was time. Ed's voice filled the studio. You know that voice? That big introduction energy. He brought Tim out like he always did, and the audience exploded. 300 people on their feet, laughing before he even appeared. Because that's what Tim did. He made people laugh, just by existing. And then he walked out. Well, not walked. He stumbled out, bumped into the curtain, paused like it offended him. The audience lost it immediately. Same old Tim, same rhythm, same magic. But not quite. He got to the desk. We shook hands, firm grip. But there was something in it. Something tighter. Like he was holding on to something. We sat down, I leaned forward, big smile. Tim, it's great to have you. Classic setup, safe, comfortable. And then he leaned into the microphone. Just slightly, barely noticeable, and he said it, very quietly, so quietly it almost didn't register. Johnny, thank you. That's it. No punchline, no setup, no joke, just 3 words. And something inside me just stopped. My smile dropped. My hand slipped off the desk. And for the first time in years, I had nothing. No comeback, no joke, no instinct, nothing. You have to understand this. I had built my entire life on never being caught off guard. Presidents, actors, comedians, anything could happen on that stage, and I could handle it, always. But this wasn't television anymore. This was something else. The room changed. You could feel it. The laughter faded. The orchestra went silent. Even the crew stopped moving. And I just sat there, frozen. 47 seconds. That's what they told me later. 47 seconds of silence on live television. Do you know how long that is? It feels like forever. And in that silence, something started coming back to me. Something old. Something I hadn't thought about in years. Something from a completely different time. Back then, I wasn't the Johnny Carson people think they know. I wasn't the king of late night. I was trying to hold on to a job that I wasn't even sure I deserved. The network was watching. Ratings mattered. Every joke mattered. Every night felt like a test. And there was one night, one specific night, where everything felt like it was falling apart. The material wasn't working. The audience wasn't responding. And I remember sitting there thinking, this is it. They're going to replace me. And maybe they should. That thought, it stays with you, even when things get better. But then, something happened. I let go, stopped thinking about the pressure, stopped thinking about the network, stopped trying to be perfect. And I just talked. Just did the bit the way I wanted to. Free, unfiltered. And suddenly, the audience came alive. They laughed, really laughed. Not polite, not forced, real laughter. That night, I went home. And for the first time in weeks, I believed I could actually do this, that I belonged there, that I wasn't going to lose everything. But here's the thing. I thought that night only mattered to me. I thought it was just my moment, my turning point. I had no idea that somewhere in a dark apartment, someone else was watching. And that my voice, my stupid little story, my attempt to survive my own fear, was saving someone else's life. And now, 15 years later, that same man was sitting across from me on live television, looking me in the eyes and saying, "Thank you." That's why I couldn't speak. That's why everything stopped. Because in that moment, I realized something bigger than television, something bigger than jokes, something bigger than ratings. You never know who's watching. You never know who needs you. You never know what one moment, one sentence, one laugh can do for someone else. Steady look into camera. And that night, I was about to find out just how much it meant. I wish I could tell you I handled that moment perfectly, but I didn't. Not even close. I was still sitting there, trying to collect myself, trying to become Johnny Carson again, the version people expected to see. Confident, smooth, in control. But inside, something had already cracked. I reached for the glass of water under the desk. My hand wasn't steady. I remember that clearly. It's funny, the small details you notice in moments like that. You don't think about the audience. You don't think about the cameras. You think about your hands shaking. I took a sip, bought myself a few seconds, because that's what I needed, just a few seconds, to breathe. When I finally looked up again, Tim was still there, still sitting quietly, not smiling, not joking, just waiting. And that's when I understood something. He wasn't here to be funny. Not tonight. I leaned toward the microphone. My voice felt different, lower, slower. "Tim, do you want to tell him why you're thanking me?" The room went completely still again. You could hear people breathing. That kind of silence doesn't happen in television. It doesn't belong there. Tim looked at the audience, then at the camera, then back at me. And I could see it, he was nervous. Not the playful nervous he used for comedy, real nervous. Eyes narrow slightly. He took a breath. And when he spoke, his voice was quieter than I'd ever heard it. I've been trying to figure out how to say this for 15 years. 15 years. That number hit me immediately. Because in this business, nothing lasts that long. Not jokes, not moments, not even careers sometimes. But whatever this was, it had stayed with him. All that time, he continued. In 1963, I was in a very dark place. The audience shifted. You could feel it. That subtle movement, when people stop being entertained and start listening. Really listening, I mean that literally, he said. I was alone in my apartment. The lights were off, and I had made a decision that I wasn't going to see the next morning. I felt something drop in my chest when he said that. Because suddenly, this wasn't just a story. This was a line between life and not life. And he was standing on it, right there, in front of all of us. I turned the television on, he said. I don't even know why. And you were on. You were doing a bit, something about a state fair. I don't even remember it exactly. He smiled, just slightly, and I laughed. I laughed so hard I fell off the couch. You could hear a few soft reactions in the audience. Not laughter. Something else. Recognition. And when I was lying there, he said slowly, I thought, recognition, lean slightly forward. If something this simple can still exist in the world, then maybe I should stay long enough to see what happens next. That line hit harder than anything I had heard in years, because it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't exaggerated. It was simple and real. I got up, he said. I took the letters I had written, I tore them up, and I stayed. Silence, complete silence. No applause, no reaction, just stillness. Because everyone in that room understood this wasn't something you clap for. This was something you feel. He looked at me again, and this time his eyes were wet. You didn't know you were doing it. You were just doing your job. But that night, your job saved my life. I couldn't look at him for a second. I looked down at the desk, because suddenly everything felt heavier. The desk, the chair, the lights, all of it. I had spent years thinking my job was simple. Tell jokes, make people laugh, fill an hour, go home, repeat. But in that moment, that definition broke apart. I looked back at him, and I realized I needed to say something, not as a host, not as a performer, but as me. I need to tell you something, I said, and I need to say it here, in front of everyone, because some things only matter when they're said out loud. I know that bit, I told him. The State Fair one, August of '63. He blinked, surprised, and I nodded, because I remembered it too. Not perfectly, but enough. And do you know why I remember it? Because that was one of the worst weeks of my life. The audience shifted again. Now they were hearing my side. The material wasn't working, the network wasn't happy, and I was sitting behind that desk thinking, this is the end. I thought I was going to lose everything. And then I stopped trying to be perfect. I stopped trying to impress anyone. I just let go. And that bit, that stupid little story, was the moment I remembered why I wanted to do this in the first place. I looked straight at him, and for the first time, it all connected. That night saved me too. We just didn't know it. And in that moment, sitting across from each other, on that stage, with millions of people watching, we both understood something at the exact same time. We had saved each other, without ever meeting, without ever speaking, without even knowing, and somehow life had brought us back together, just so we could finally say it. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. A slow breath, eyes still on Tim. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We didn't need to, because everything that mattered had already been said. But the silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt full, heavy, but in a different way, like something had finally been released. I could hear someone in the audience crying, not loudly, just enough to break the stillness. And once that sound entered the room, it spread, slowly, like a ripple. I looked around. People weren't laughing anymore. They weren't even trying to. They were just feeling it. Ed had his hand over his face. I'd known Ed a long time, long enough to recognize when something hit him deep. And this was one of those moments. I turned back to Tim. He was holding something in his hands, that same piece of paper I'd seen earlier, wrinkled, worn, like it had lived a long life. He placed it gently on the desk between us. I want you to have this, he said. I looked at it, didn't touch it right away, because something told me this wasn't just paper. What is it? I asked quietly. He gave a small breath. It's the bit, he said. That night, the State Fair, I wrote down everything I could remember. The next morning, I didn't want to forget it. That stayed with me, because for me, it was just another night, another monologue, another moment in a long line of moments. But for him, it was the moment, the one that mattered, the one that stayed. I kept it, he continued, for 15 years. 15 years in a drawer in his life, carried quietly. I finally reached for it, carefully, like you handle something fragile, something that means more than it looks. The paper was soft at the edges, folded, unfolded, over and over again. You could feel time in it. I don't even remember it well enough to write it myself, I said. He nodded. I know. That's why I kept it. So one of us would. Dottie por. That line hit me harder than anything else that night, because it meant he had been holding on to something that I had already let go of. And without him, that moment would have disappeared, like most things do. I folded the paper slowly, deliberately, and I slipped it into the inside pocket of my jacket. I'll keep it there, I said. He gave a small nod. That's where it belongs. And just like that, something shifted again. Not back to normal, not back to comedy, but forward, into something new. I looked toward the audience, then toward the camera, and for the first time that night, I spoke not as a host, but as a man trying to make sense of what just happened. 22 million people watch this show, I said. Every night. And every night I sit here, and I do my job. But the truth is, I never know who's out there. I never know who's watching. I never know what they're going through. I never know what they need. And tonight, I found out. I turned back to Tim. At least once, 15 years ago, I know exactly who I was talking to. And that realization, it doesn't leave you, because suddenly, Everything you do means more. Every word, every pause, every moment. You start to understand this isn't just a show, it's a connection. Tim leaned back slightly. He looked lighter. Not completely, but different. Like something he had been carrying for years had finally been put down. And I understood that feeling, because I felt it too. The producers didn't cut to commercial. They didn't interrupt. For once, television didn't try to control the moment. It just let it happen. And the audience stayed with us. Not as viewers, but as witnesses. That's the only word that fits. They weren't watching a performance. They were witnessing something real. I glanced at Ed. He gave me a small nod. No words, just understanding. And in that moment, I realized something else, something even deeper. This wasn't just about me and Tim. This was about everyone in that room, everyone watching at home, everyone who had ever sat alone, in the dark, thinking they were the only one. And somehow, through something as simple as a joke, we had reached across that distance, not intentionally, not perfectly, but enough to make someone stay. And that, look into camera, is bigger than anything I had ever done on that stage. You know, there are moments in life that don't feel big when they happen. They don't come with music, or lights, or applause. They feel ordinary. But years later, you realize they changed everything. After that night, after Tim told the truth, the show wasn't the same anymore. And neither was I. We finished the broadcast, but nobody moved right away. Not the audience, not the crew, not even Ed. Ed McMahon. He had been sitting next to me for years. He'd seen everything, every joke, every guest, every moment where things almost went wrong. But that night, he didn't say a word. When the cameras finally cut, he just leaned over, put his hand on my shoulder, and squeezed it. That was it. No joke, no comment. Just above whisper, just understanding. Tim stayed seated across from me. He didn't rush off stage. He didn't try to lighten the mood, look directly forward. He just sat there like he had been carrying something for 15 years and finally put it down. I remember looking at him, really looking at him, not host human, not as a guest, not as the funniest man, just as a person. And I realized something I wish I had understood earlier in my life. You never know who's watching you or why. We went backstage together after that. The hallway was quiet, too quiet for a place that's usually full of noise. Crew, laughter, movement, looked slightly down. Tim walked next to me, holding that same piece of paper. I asked him, "Why didn't you tell me before?" He smiled, just a little. He said, "I didn't know how. Let it land." And honestly, I understood that. Because there are things in life that feel too big, too heavy to put into words. We stood outside my dressing room, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. Then Tim looked at me and said something I'll never forget. "You gave me a reason to stay. Not, you made me laugh. Not, you entertained me. You gave me a reason to stay." Do you understand how heavy those words are? Because staying is sometimes the hardest thing a person can do. And he did it because of a moment I didn't even remember. We went inside my dressing room. I sat down, he sat across from me, just like on stage. But this time, there were no cameras. He handed me that paper again. I opened it. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't polished. But it was pieces of jokes, lines, timing notes, things I had said, things he had held on to for 15 years. I looked at him, and I said something, without thinking. "I wish I had known." He shook his head. "No, you did it better, not knowing. Because if I had known, maybe I would have tried too hard. Maybe I would have performed it differently. Maybe it wouldn't have been real." And that's when it hit me. The best moments we create are the ones we don't force, the ones where we're just being ourselves. That night changed something inside me, not just as a host, but as a person. For years, I thought my job was simple. Make people laugh, keep things light, move on to the next guest. But after that night, I understood it was something more. It wasn't just about jokes. It was about connection, about showing up, even when you don't realize someone might need you. Because somewhere, someone is watching, and you might be the only light they see in that moment. I kept that piece of paper, not in a drawer, not in a file, but somewhere I wouldn't forget it, because I never wanted to forget what that night meant, and what it taught me, that sometimes the smallest moment can save a life. You know, people think a television show is just entertainment. Lights, cameras, laughter. But sometimes it becomes something else. After that night with Tim, letters started coming in. Not a few, thousands, stacks of them from people all over the country. Some were short, just a few lines. Others pages long. Stories about nights just like his. People sitting alone in quiet rooms, thinking maybe they couldn't keep going. And then something small happened. A joke, a moment, a voice on a screen, and they stayed. That's when I realized something I wish every person could understand. You don't need to be famous to matter. You don't need a stage or millions of people watching you. Because impact doesn't come from how many people see you. It comes from who needed you in that exact moment. Tim Conway, he went on to make the world laugh for decades. Awards, shows, standing ovations. But if you asked him what mattered most, it was that night when he chose to stay. And me, I spent 30 years sitting behind that desk, talking, joking, interviewing. But if someone asked me what moment mattered the most, emotional, it wasn't the biggest guest or the highest ratings. Look directly forward, it was that night. Because for the first time, I understood what this really was. Not a show, a connection, a bridge between people who may never meet, but somehow still reach each other. Years later, after I left television, I still thought about that night, more than any other, because it reminded me of something simple but powerful. We're all a part of someone else's story, even when we don't know it. Tim came back 15 years later just to say thank you, and that moment meant more than anything else in my entire career. So before this ends, before slightly leaning forward, I want you to think about something. There's someone in your life who helped you without even knowing it. Someone who made you laugh on a hard day. Someone who showed up when everything felt heavy. Someone who gave you a reason to stay. Tell them, don't wait 15 years. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Look directly forward. Just tell them, because you never know what your words might mean to someone who's been carrying them for a very long time. And if you are that person, if you're the one holding on, stay, because the next moment might change everything. It did for Tim, and it did for me. Thank you for being here.